Hello and welcome to Soul Portals, exploring psychospiritual horizons with your hosts Cedric Speyer and DeeAnna Nagel. Cedric is an author and therapist who developed the InnerView Guidance model and is a pathfinder in the psychospiritual realm. DeeAnna created the Essential Soul Care model, a model suitable for therapists, coaches, and healers. The monthly episodes of Soul Portals feature guests sharing insights from their personal paths and professional practices. Thank you for tuning in for the Soul Talk with all kinds of trailblazing teachers and guides as Cedric, DeeAnna, and guests explore new evolutionary landscapes.
Let's get going.
Okay, welcome to Soul Portals and this month's episode. We always do this opening invocation, which goes like this: may the spirit flow freely through this conversation and this gathering, allowing it to be both energizing and edifying. And this month we welcome our portal of the month, which is Kate Graham. And she's a modern day shaman, who works with both individuals and groups in a unique blend of shamanic healing, hypnotherapy, intuitive oracle work. She covers a lot of ground. I'll let her do a brief intro of who you are in the world before we get into the inner world. Who you are in the outer world.
Yes, who I am in the outer world. I actually think that's probably a harder question to answer.
Yeah, I
in
knew
the inner world. Yeah. Who I am in the outer world. So yeah, I think maybe other things that people find interesting about me are that I am living nomadically, and that I founded OracleFest, which is a series of online gatherings that are now going to in-person events. So I was actually just at Mount Shasta yesterday, if you can believe that, checking out the scene so that we could maybe bring an event there. And yeah, I have a lot of different healing modalities, but ultimately I'm quite multi-passionate. So I'm doing a lot of artistry and retreat work as we speak now. Who knows what it'll be tomorrow, but
and you have a nice balance between individual guidance and the collective, our collective evolution.
Yes.
Right.
I would say I spend a lot of time, even just in my own personal spiritual work, connecting to the energies of the collective consciousness. There's something very interesting to me about the power we all have to use our thoughts and our hearts towards the greater good of our whole humanity, somehow from an individual level. So yeah, very, very fascinated by all of that.
Yeah, and there's an interface, a crossover with counseling and therapy, which is also, of course, about the inner world. But I get the sense that you're going inside the inner world. Other layers of it.
Potentially beyond the inner world. My business name is Heart's Frontier, because I always like this idea of like starting from the heart and then the expanse kind of that comes out of that. And turns out that frontier is way larger than I ever had anticipated. So it leads me down lots of rabbit holes and different areas of focus. And yeah, it does feel like the psychotherapy and the counseling and the therapeutic way of looking at things is really in the forefront of my mind as well, because I have been working on a book with a friend of mine who is a psychotherapist, trying to blend some of these ideas and think differently about, could we use some of these more shamanic ways of looking at things? Could we use that lens and help it enhance our perception of what's going on for people in their inner world and beyond?
Right. Okay, so let's get to the opening quote, which is from this book, The Shaman's Body. Is it shaman or shaman?
It's either.
Okay. The subtitle, A New Shamanism for Transforming Health, Relationships, and the Community. So very, similar to your path. And this is Arnold Mindell, the author of Dream Body. Anyway, here's the quote that reminded me of your path and practice. The shaman remembers her entire self at all times. When she is in the world of daily activity, she is at the same time on a mountaintop, just as when she is asleep, she is awake. The skill is an ability to pick up on secondary processes, but the meta skill is a compassion for yourself and the experience. The shaman in you, because that's part of our theme, that there's a shaman in everybody. It's just a matter of how much it's developed. The shaman in you understands power as a love for the unusual, a love that brings everything to life. Love for the absurd is a transformative meta skill that turns anything and anybody into gold. Worship not the object, but the spirit that it animates, not the content, but the creative element in the background.
Lovely.
So that's a theme very close to my path, which is called InnerView, which is that secondary process. It has a different terms: double awareness, duo consciousness. We were talking about the inner and outer worlds. Like, that's a real skill to stay conscious of both.
Yes, and for people who are familiar with it, it's like the thing that we always say within shamanism is keeping one foot in the ordinary and one foot in the non-ordinary, whichever one is which. I still don't know, but keeping one foot in here in the 3D and one foot out. And so, yeah, that really does embrace so much of the path. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So, Kate, I have a question. What was the spiritual path or influence that you had early on that you think has brought you to who you are and what you do now?
Yeah, I mean, I think my own story is beautiful. I think it's okay if everyone sees their own story as beautiful. And when I was young, I had these psychic dreams that my family was going to move before we actually moved. And they were incessant. And I would get all these dreams. I was sleeping in a room in the basement of this like split level home, and my family, all the rest of them were upstairs, and I always had this basement room, and really like too big of a bed for how little I was. And then all the underneath the bed there was some storage, and there was these old ancestral items from my Scottish side that were sitting in like a suitcase. And sometimes in the middle of the night I'd have a really active dream, and I would roll out of, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but you have a dream and you jolt and you actually roll out of your bed completely, like you're on the floor. This happened to me as a kid. I'd wake up on the floor going, oh, what was that? And I would look to my right and I would see this sword from my Scottish ancestral lineage, and just be like, what is that? What is this story? What is that doing there? And my parents always just thought, oh, this is fine, oh, your grandma had psychic dreams. It's fine. It's all good. And so I didn't think much of it. And I was very sensitive and aware, but I just thought I was like a little know-it-all. So I didn't really think it was anything like claircognizance or clear knowing or clear feeling or anything like that. And I would say the real time where my spirituality hit like a strange turn was when I was in my preteen years. And I was in a gifted class, a bunch of know-it-all kids, and they were chastising me because I didn't swear. I was like a goody good, and so they didn't understand that too much, and they didn't. They thought that it was because I was religious. I'd come from a Catholic school, but it was really just because I didn't think it was very mean. I didn't need to swear, and I didn't feel it. But I ended up really questioning myself because of how often people were questioning my beliefs, and looking at it. And in that time, I was getting bullied a lot, and so people didn't make sense to me anymore. Like, people were so nice for a while, and then I thought, what on earth is going on? Like, this reality is suddenly way more distasteful. I have to be in school for how long, and I have to listen to adults for how long, and all my peers are mean to me. That doesn't make any sense. Like, I was really difficult to reconcile all of that. And I was questioning my beliefs and going, why aren't there more women in the church? This is weird. And all these different things were coming up. And I went to all my different friends' churches to try and see what is it, what's going on with me. My parents never talked to me about any of that stuff. So it was like a real solo journey trying to just understand what was going on inside of me. And at that time in my puberty age, I had seizures. And I had these absent seizures, petit mal, I would basically leave consciousness for 10 to 40 seconds at a time, and then come back and have to figure it out and just keep moving on with life. And it might happen a few times a day. And so I'd be in school, the teacher would be talking, I'd gap, I'd come back, and then suddenly I'm like, okay, I'll just start listening again. And you just stay in your chair and you keep going. But other scenarios, it really had me with, I would describe it as like an altered perception of reality, because I was somehow just trying to make sense of reality so often in my life, but at such a young age, and no one was really understanding the depth of what maybe I could have been feeling, but I kept feeling like time was being taken from me. Like it was just these,
Were you
right?
conscious, like in those gaps?
Nope,
No.
nope, no. And what's fascinating, that's so consciousness, really, the whole issue of this really hit me early on in life as something to think about. And what's fascinating is I was just telling this story last night, actually. One time I was playing, because I was playing this piano. I was playing piano, and it was a grand piano recital. So someone was adjudicating, this judge was sitting with a little light and scratching down notes for my playing. And while I played, I'd practiced this song so many times. While I played, I had a seizure because it was a stressful environment. Even though I was on medication, it was like, no, a seizure still has to pop through if you're that stressed. There's only so much medication can help with. And I was playing piano, and while I had the seizure, my fingers kept playing. And then when I came back, I watched them stop. And then I was very confused because suddenly there was these big lights and I'm on a grand piano, which was unusual. And so you're fuzzy in memory because that's an unfamiliar situation. But if I was in a familiar situation, I would just carry on because my brain was so used to it. Was like this comfort zone. So yeah, very interesting. And then I grew out of them at about age 13, and then over time came back to the spiritual path. But that was a really interesting time in my life, I think, for cracking open the how do I feel, what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Colin Wilson writes a lot about those stories where there's like these slippages where people are actually slipping into other times and places.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what ended up happening later when I got into shamanic work. It was known as, this is like your shamanic initiation. You were just leaving this world. You didn't come back with messages at the time because you didn't know how, and you were real stressed. And I also look at it, well, I was leaving this earth for moments at a time to protect me because it was really difficult for me to be on earth at that time and feel all of that as a sensitive being. And so it was this healing, protective move of my body to short circuit me and break up my reality. Yeah.
So what's also interesting is I have a similar, I didn't have the seizures. I did have some time gaps growing up. And I had the intuitive bit, and I was misunderstood and all of that. I think many of us who are intuitives have that. But it didn't lead me to necessarily a spiritual awakening. I stayed in the confines of the religious upbringing I was raised in. And so it's just interesting that paths can take us in so many different directions, similar paths, right?
Yes.
Because it sounds like you found, and this is from my perspective, you found a much more expansive, open process for you to come into yourself.
Well, let's be real here. It was much later when that was discovered. So the real timeline truly is, I knew I had to then get through high school and college or whatever else I was supposed to do, right? All of your conventional things. I did feel really bound by that, but I didn't want anyone worrying about me or stressing out. So I would like fake it, like pose it in, and people didn't know. I was still very much in inner turmoil. Very much so, trying to understand my place in the world or purpose or what means anything to me. Like, it just seemed that I had such a beautiful way of looking at things as a child. And then, of course, as we grow older, we start becoming more aware of how the world is in certain and it's hard to get back to that place of feeling. But I think I really was driven to that. But I had a much more serious, very tough time mentally. when I was in college, because I was getting more psychic dreams again, telling me this time that I was going to do healing work. And so there was sort of these stages of, okay, here's how much you can handle now, here's how much you can handle now. So like at that time for you, DeeAnna, probably it wasn't okay for you to step completely away from the religious framework, because it was probably helpful and supportive in some way for you at that.
Right. And I
Yeah.
was at your age that you are now, and I was still in that box.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Does it feel nice to be out of it though?
I have a question,
Yeah.
Pete. With what you know now and all your gifts as a healer, your knowledge, wisdom, how would you coach that little Kate? How would you guide her? What would you tell her if she could
Honestly, yeah,
consult
I
you?
love this. I was thinking about this recently, so this is great that we're chatting about this. So I did have one doctor who gave me a book, because she saw that I was stressed out by trying to understand what was happening among preteen social dynamics and friendships and things. They didn't really make much sense to me, what people were, or oh, all these crushes that boys had. Oh my gosh, that didn't make sense to me yet. I was just not there. And she gave me this book that actually, the movie Mean Girls is based off a nonfiction book called Queen Bees and Wannabes, about like a high school and all the different pods that the writer had noticed that exist and how people relate to each other. So I would say, like, A, that's helpful for just anyone who is going through bullying and trying to make sense of, how are people mean to me? They've been so nice to me because I've been a kid for so long, and suddenly my peers have turned, or there's something that is like a severe conflict, it feels like, for a child. We can often forget, oh yeah, that's kids. That's how kids are. Oh, they're just jealous. Blah, blah, blah. That stuff doesn't make sense to you as a kid. You can't just say, oh yeah, they're jealous. That really didn't make sense to me, that would be what was going on at all. That still only sort of makes sense. But what I would tell this young version of me is that some people view what you're going through as a very special thing. And right now, it doesn't maybe make that much sense to you. But then I would sit with my little self and say, why don't we try journeying or daydreaming? And you tell me about what you're daydreaming about. Because daydreaming, nope, can't do that. That's you not looking focused, right?
Mhm.
Journeying, I wouldn't have even been familiar with the idea of someone drumming and me journeying to the non-ordinary. But I have a strong belief that we could have cut that time that I was experiencing seizures for a few years, maybe in half, if I got training for how to return to this earth, because it was real confusing every time to return to earth without knowing that anything had happened. It's like a vacation you didn't get any photos for, but you know you left, and you're only
Right.
at the airport and then at the airport again. And so it would be really cool to like have someone sit with me as a child and say, what if we did try, these different things? And there's something as well about the fact that I really felt quite alone in my religious and spiritual searching. So even though I went to, like, I don't know why my parents didn't question me on this, because I was like, I'm going to this person's church, and now this weekend I'm going to this other person's church.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to join that youth group. I'm just
Yeah.
going over here. And they're like, okay, yeah, Kate wants friends at church, I guess. And they didn't really care about religion themselves. I felt deeply, because I thought that's one place where everyone's nice, or they're supposed to be nice to each other, and they sing songs, and they have good feelings, and they talk about being good people.
I like that description. They're supposed to be nice to each other.
I know that church groups not always is that the case, but for me, that was the appeal for me of going to churches. And I wish that maybe an adult had just thought, well, this is curious. Why is this girl without parents or other influences deciding to do this? It would be really interesting if one of the pastors or something had just sat with me to say, hey, what's going on? What brings you here? Right. But yeah, so I think something that my friends who have kids always notice about me is that I treat kids, children, teenagers as if they're humans and adults, and talk right on the level. And I really struggled to receive people who would talk to me on the level I was wanting to talk at when I was young. I think it caused me a lot of mental stress and emotional, it probably led to that, the seizure disorder, just a whole mix of things being okay. That's quite a lot. So yeah, I would talk to little Kate about how to come back.
I
So
really share that value of not talking down to kids, and like really on the
Yeah.
level as equals, all that. And it's amazing when you do that, how they respond to it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I
Yeah.
can remember being told, now we're having adult conversations.
Right.
Adult conversation.
Like, okay, I understand it. Like,
Yeah,
why can't I be in the
exactly.
room? What does that mean, an adult conversation?
Exactly. And you know what? Like, I do think that there's certain conversations that a kid shouldn't have to be around that. So maybe there is something like what an adult conversation is. But I would say, I want you not to have to worry about what we're talking about here. It's really nothing to do with you. And so would you mind going to another space, right? Like as a thing, because it's more like we have something to talk about that's just between us here. Or it's like more it's a private conversation rather than like adult. Like you don't get allowed that
Right.
being allowed to do
And
things is probably my biggest.
vice versa, because there's things that kids want to know from the adult world,
Yeah.
that to engage with them. My big one was death, like at the age of 12, like I was really grappling with death, like I'm here and then I'm not going to be here. And I was
Mhm.
really stretching to understand it. And then I would go around asking the adults and, of course, very funny answers, beginning with, oh, we as adults, we don't think about that.
Oh, interesting. You don't
Like
think
that was one
about
of the
it.
answers. That
Oh,
was one of the answers. Like
that's
we don't think about
fascinating.
it, you know. Whereas I was thinking deeply about it, I needed someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, Cedric, I share that and I didn't even mention it, but that was me at 5 years old, if you can believe that.
yeah.
I was just learning to read
I
and I
can
thought,
believe it.
huh, this whole death thing, why aren't we talking about death more? How come no one else is as concerned as I am about the fact that we're all going to die? I would every day I'd go to sleep and I'd be thinking about it before I go to sleep, trying to,
Right.
see your private time, trying to think it out. And I would ask my parents about it, and they were like, "Oh, Kate, we don't need to think about that right now." And I said, "Well, I am. I don't know why you're not, but I am." And
But
I
that
said, "It's
ties
so sad."
directly into your ancestral work, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean,
yes,
that's like
absolutely.
a direct link to shamanism and, depending on how you practice shamanic rituals, the underworld, all of that.
Yeah,
And
and
so
well, now I do psychopomp, which is like
I do too.
right, and that isn't that exactly what you want? Is like, hey, there's better ways we could look at this whole death thing. And now I
And
have this amazing art process in my mind of walking people through my shamanic view of what happens in the stage of dying towards crossing over, and that there's one of the stages is always sticks in my mind so beautifully. It's like writing out the words unsaid. So all the things in our lifetime that we hadn't said we have
that's
this
that's,
long
that's great.
parchment scroll, and I just see everyone sitting in desks, and there's this one person who's who had not spoken, and they were mute in their life, and they were from like the Middle Ages, and they're still writing because they didn't say anything their whole life, and I always think, oh, that's kind of charming.
Can you say what psychopomp is for our audience
Yes,
who don't know that?
yeah, yeah. Psychopomp, in the way that I practice, is the idea of going into the non-ordinary realm. It feels like a middle realm journey because it's the
Mhm.
land of here but not quite here, the Alice in Wonderland version of our
Yep.
3D reality. And so, what I do is I venture out to the world and I say, where do I need to go today? And it will take me somewhere where there's some soul who has not yet transitioned over to the light. And so what I will do is I will meet them where they are, figure out maybe the best way of helping or supporting them in understanding this is what's next, and helping that be calm. And then I help them, deliver them up to the light, in order to relieve some of the burdens that are just lingering around this world. And so it is
Mm.
beautiful work. I don't do it for people, but just for myself whenever I can. And often right now, I'm taken to places that have a lot to do with the healing work I'm meant to do here on Earth. So I'm taken to mental health institutions of the past where people were locked up. And then I'm also taken to Madagascar and I'm helping with orphans and children who have been left behind there.
You're
And
talking,
so it's very
are you talking literally or etherically, you mean?
etherically. I have not been to Madagascar physically yet.
Okay.
So
Because
the
because
the
I could,
other
yeah, I
go
could
ahead.
see just one little thing. I could see you actually going into mental hospitals when at some point in the future that there's a real openness to that, to working in them, on the warts.
This is what's very, very, very much in my focus, what I'm writing the book about, because I think we're due for a new look at reality and how we see reality. And from the psychotherapy lens, we've often been trying to bring people to a reality that makes sense for the structures that we've been working with that are our perceived safety at the time. So that would be more of the black and white, tangible world. Hey, you can't be seeing anything that isn't here, right? We got to bring you back to the here. Well, do we, or could we embrace some aspects of a larger version of reality that might bring them more peace and not be so stressed out about getting it wrong in the black and white 3D tangible reality? And so my hope is that by thinking of all these different versions of our reality, like the reality of death, the reality of life itself, right, would be one that you and I, you at 12, me at 5, thank goodness. But what about the person who's in their 40s, 50s, and everything has been figured out in their life, and then suddenly that starts to change their perception of reality? Maybe they lose a parent and their version of reality has shifted in some way. Well, do we want them to go back to where they came from? Probably not. It's actually scary. Why did I have seizures? I was trying to leave this world, not come back to this world, right? It was uncomfortable for me to be in this world. So yeah, I do think a lot about that.
And that really lines up therapeutically too, because it's the purpose of symptoms, right? That's like Jung on a deep level, and Adler, emphasize the purpose of it's more than the cause of symptoms, the purpose of symptoms.
Yeah, what are they there for? Yeah.
So I just want to put a tiny little spin on psychopomp work. I've come to know it as similar to being a death doula, except it's after the fact.
Yeah,
right?
You don't help them while they're still here.
Okay, I want to bring this to the theme of the podcast today. So how does everything we just talked about, who you are, how you came to be, how you came to do what you do, how does that impact the healing of the collective?
So something that I picked up on quite early was that a lot of those kids who were being mean to me also kind of had mean parents.
No kidding.
And I didn't love the vibe that was the life they had, because my parents were real nice to me. And so I just it didn't make sense to me. So when I started doing my own ancestral healing work, I realized how much of who I am has been influenced by those who came before me in such a beautiful way and in such a tragic way as well. One of the things that I've done is, and I encourage anyone to do this, if you can just put on some music and really, really let yourself feel all parts of this in your body, is to stand in a room and then take a step backwards to the left and step into the steps of the feet of your mother, and then step backwards into the feet of her mother, and on and on. And what I experienced when I did that, both on my matrilineal line and my patrilineal line, on my mother's side, what I felt was like so many imbalances. And they weren't trying to be imbalanced, but I felt, oh, a hip issue. And my mom, I felt like, woof, I'm just going to fall over. She has multiple sclerosis, so she doesn't have great balance, to be fair. And as I kept stepping backwards, there was only one of those great grandmother energies that didn't have that imbalance. And it happened to be one who's actually communicated with me many times. And when I think about the idea that all of us have these patterns that have somehow just been carried in our DNA and passed down, we also have this powerful awareness nowadays that the heart and the brain have like a certain transference of, if we're sitting with someone, there's actually a communication that's going on. When I think about that, and I think about the power of all of us using our hearts and our brains for healing, we are healing all those generational traumas way faster when we're using the power of community. A lot of our wounding comes from separation and division. And so the idea of unity and connecting everyone, that seems to be what a lot of the spiritual stuff ends up being about at its core, is love and unity and joy, maybe, or celebration in some kind of way. And so I love the idea of more and more people adding positively to our collective mindset So even though it can kind of be annoying maybe to talk to me sometimes because I'm trying to point out how we might be able to look at things differently, I really think it's important light work to be shifting even how we talk about basic things. We use some of these phrases constantly of even just talking about the weather in a negative way, and then that stays in our collective consciousness. Or, oh, it's really scary. People, I mean, let's not talk about this for too long, but politics, when people have a certain story or fear around what's happening in the political sphere, we are actually weakening our collective mindset by believing that some power is greater than you and greater than spirit. And so I love the idea of us healing the collective mindset for all the different beliefs we've carried over time that haven't helped us. And it can really free up then how we use our hearts, because our minds are the thing kind of influencing our ability to speak and communicate clearly through our hearts. So the hypnotherapy work I've done also really, really influenced that, to answer your question as well, is hypnotherapy work and deep belief work, deep subconscious work has really shown me how we are so innocent. We really didn't mean to add in all of these beliefs that really harm us or harm others. And so returning to innocence of the collective consciousness, and maybe because this is the inspiring age of AI becoming public, it feels like maybe there's an opportunity for us to shape the collective thoughts to be ones of the life we're looking to have. And whenever I look at healing, when I see someone who's really suffering, they're usually looking at all the stuff they don't want anymore. It's pretty obvious that's where their mind is focused, because you think, well, that's the problem. But the thing is, we've got to look at where the solution is, not, you can't solve your problem with the same thinking that created it, right? You have to have different thinking to get out of. I love that idea.
That's Einstein,
I love me some Einstein. Einstein's one of my big celeb crushes. That and Harrison Ford.
There's the other side of the coin of the ancestral healing. It, along the lines of what you're saying now, is the gifts that are being transmitted through the generations.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Like
So
our inheritance.
yeah, inheritance of all things, right? Inheritance is not only limited to physical and monetary value, but the value I've gotten from my Scottish side doing all of that ancestral healing is that actually I found out all of the men on that side were doctors or priests. And so this spiritual healing pull for me made so much sense. It never made sense because none of the people I know here on earth from my family really care about that. It was strange to me. Well, where did this come from? Where do I come from? Right. And so I'm using one of the ancestors of my clan, his poetry, into songs. And so this part of me is very connected to the Stoic spiritual way. And now I'm going to the Netherlands this year to connect with the mom side, and mom's side, very, very creative, artistic. And this is the year I'm stepping into my own artistry more fully and claiming and owning that. That's amazing, the healing that can come when we connect to those who aren't here and heal some of those relationships as well. So, and sometimes, often I would say, when we've had a tough relationship with someone when they're here and then they shift on, right? Then we might have a better connection with them sometimes when they cross over, because they're not carrying all those burdens and that's the stuff that is attached to the mind and the beliefs that have carried through, that those burdens are the things that we're meant to release and to lift up. And when I think about how many people have lost faith in humanity, I also think it's important to recognize there's a lot of people who have a lot of faith in humanity and put that energy forward. And so another great Einstein one is that even though he was very intelligent, he was also incredibly depressed, because to know more is to be sadder about all that you know, right, in some way. And he said that one of the things that kept him going was the idea that even though he's not around them all the time, he knows that there's other people in the world who believe in a better world and who want more love, more joy, etc. And so that spirit, I think, is something that we ought to keep weaving into this collective mindset. So I think that as often as you can, add that into the pot. And it's about, I think we're going into this age of Aquarius in a way where we're noticing that thoughts become things way faster. And what we think about someone suddenly kind of comes back at us in a bit more of a rapid fashion than it used to, because I think as a collective, what it feels like is that we are raising up into understanding more of what is possible with our minds, with our brains. Very big power energy houses. And so I feel passionately about hoping that we keep some of the wholesome heart-based ways of living as important for our mind is getting to us to this place, not to some outer, level of achievement or something like that. What are we working towards collectively would be a really good question for everyone to ask themselves. What do you want to work towards as a collective with all of humanity?
On the individual level, James Redfield, the Celestine Prophecy. So one chapter, probably more in the workbook, is about look at your parents and the main gift of your father and main gift of your mother, and then the way you synergize those, the way you put them together, those two gifts, the union, and then take it further.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And taking it further for all of us looks like our individual path expressing who we are more fully. So it seems like, often when people are stressed about something that's going on in the world, they're stressed because they feel powerless, right? So you find out about this atrocity, take war, for example, you find out about war and it hits your heart if you're lucky, right? If you can have that kind of feeling, because it's challenging to feel all the density and the suffering of the world. And it's difficult to actually allow ourselves to even empathize fully, because it's hard to fathom actually how much the scale, and think of how many people in the world can't afford to eat, right? That's hard to imagine, because it's such a hard thing to embrace in our feeling place. To really feel into that is really difficult. And so on an individual level, we are actually only able to do however much you're able to do with any 24-hour period with your physical body. And so it's like, what issues are closest to your heart that you can feel, that then therefore you're able to be, helping in some way. DeeAnna, when you practice this psychopump work, it's not like you get a letter from the family who's behind saying, "Oh, thanks for that. We know that you sent him up to the upper, like to the light."
Actually, that has happened with me.
Did it? Oh my gosh.
That's how I've gotten into it, because people would come to me.
Okay,
which
so
is another story.
They
but
came saying, okay, so that's different, because they searched you out and then you go for the search. That's beautiful, right? But when I do it, I don't know, because these people have maybe been around for a long time, and so no one's looking out for them. And so it's kind of like this strange cleanup process of the spiritual world or something that I'm doing. And I'm not really, I share it now just out of interest, but I don't really talk about every time I do it. I don't go say, "Oh, this happened to me yesterday," and da 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 da. It's more like, I just know this is right, because it really hurts my heart to think that there's so many people who are hanging around and their souls wish to be free. So we go and take that time, right? But I know that there's only certain issues about the world that I am meant to be a key part of the solution for. And I take that in as, okay, this is what I feel the most passionately about. But really, the whole thing about me helping the world is really just a personal expansion. It's an individual healing, because that feeling is with me and I want it to be better, which means I need to do something in the world or feel through whatever it is. So this Madagascar vision, every time it came for me, I would just be in tears for like 6 months. And I went, well, I don't really want to go do this. This is too much. It's a lot of work. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm not sure I'm the gal for that. I got a lot of other things on the go, Spirit. Why are you making me do this one? And over time, it just tugged and tugged and tugged so incessantly that I went, well, if this feeling's got to be with me, what does it want me to do, right? What's the purpose of that feeling being with me? And the purpose is, hey, you are meant to go. We're trying to tell you this whole time. We're showing you visions of you going because you're supposed to go, right? Same with the mental health institutions, that there's something that sits with me so heavily and shows up so often, and you'll see it. You notice it, you watch a movie or something and it hits you way more than other people. That's part of your thing to feel through or be a part of in some kind of way.
Yeah. And even if your own family is dysfunctional and your community is off the rails, in some really, negative state, there's still an intention there, right? An intention that you, by virtue of being here, can pick up, and then take it in a better direction.
So
in fact, that's what like the grace of it is. Like the worst dysfunctional family, you can flip the coin. You learn from that.
Yeah, they say we choose our family as our teachers, right?
Yeah.
So
Like what we don't want, and then what do we want, and then get to work on what we do want.
To that point, Cedric, what you said about Celestine prophecy and
Yeah.
taking the goodness from your mother, the goodness from your father, whatever those gifts are, and taking it and the synergy. So when you said that, what I envision is the light of my mother, the light of my father coming together in this synergistic ball of an even bigger, brighter light.
Mm.
And if we all do that, the light gets bigger and brighter and bigger and brighter.
And it already is, which is the coolest thing, right? Like this is cool. Okay. People think the world is doomed and society is doomed, right? Because they think, oh my gosh, we've just grown too far, we've done too much, and oh, we're destroying everything. Isn't it so amazing how much has been created? And isn't it so beautiful that every single generation has healed from the past generation? It takes us a long time, but it's faster and faster now that we have more information. So the power is really in our hands. We can actually do so much more than we're giving ourselves credit for when you look at us as a collective, right? So there's this whole thing about like, where is our power coming from? And the ancient Celts actually believed that as you were walking, you would cover 3 times as much land if you walked in unison. So left, right, they all do together, stomp, stomp, stomp. And they believed and they would see that they cover 3 times as much ground if they do it together. Whereas they're left, right, they're kind of going all around and maybe everyone's scattered and Joe starts talking to Amy over here and then you don't actually have togetherness. You're not necessarily going towards the same focus goal. And so my thought would be that our subconscious of the whole humanity right now is holding our keys for how we grow and evolve. And it's the people who are really passionate about doing what their individual soul work is that are helping that speed up, right? And so I think how great we could all return to our hearts more deeply if we chose to put that energy and power towards it. And there's so many people out in the world who are working towards that mission right now. So next time, anyone who's listening to this, anytime you hear someone who's talking about how the world is so awful, right? Think about this idea of that's the thought you're adding into our collective conscious and subconscious beliefs. Because the more we repeat, oh, the world is doomed, technology is awful, oh, well, we're never gonna get back,
Right.
The more we look for ways that that's true.
But we're still here, right?
Right.
We're here now. So do you want to sit with a whole bunch of sadness or do you want to do something with it?
There's an amazing, there's an amazing quote by Sasha Sagan, who's the daughter of the great astronomer. And just, I called it up here because it's so much on what you just said. So Carl Sagan, who has that great video about the pale blue dot. Anyway, she says, no matter what the universe has in store, it cannot take away from the fact that you were born. You'll have some joy and some pain and all the other experiences that make up what it's like to be a tiny part of a grand cosmos. No matter what happens next, you are here, you are here. And even when any record of our individual lives is lost to the ages, that won't detract from the fact that we lived, we were part of the enormity, all the great and terrible parts of being alive, the shocking, sublime beauty and heartbreak, the monotony, the interior thoughts, the shared pain and pleasure. It really happened, all of it, on this little world that orbits a yellow star out in the great vastness, and that alone is cause for celebration.
It is cause for celebration. I love that.
Yeah. So I want to get this in because we're talking about the collective. And I kind of know the backstory a little bit, but I'd like for the audience to know the backstory of how you envisioned and came to create OracleFest.
That's a great segue. So
because we're all just little dots in the universe and all these dots came together. So
oh my gosh, it really still blows my mind, even you saying that. It's like I have chills just thinking about how much it continues to come together. It's a good sign for humanity that people care about this and it has energy. So I was feeling as though there was some purpose that was calling for me that I wasn't quite clear on. And so I sat down to do a shamanic journey saying, I feel like I'm getting all these kind of random signs, but I'm not exactly sure what you're pointing me towards. Can you show me about my vocation, my work or something? And I'm do in my little non-ordinary. Things are normal. Where am I going to go today? One of these other familiar places? Nope, she's taken in a wormhole out to some place, some distant star or planet, and I'm sitting there on this land on a cold stone chair, and there's just destruction all around me and all these like dark craters and things, and I'm confused as to what I'm doing there. And suddenly I'm noticing some of the people I know are down on this beautiful like pool. It's all people I've already worked with, and they're all happy. Hey, what's up, Kate? I go, what am I so upset about here? I'm sitting here alone. What am I, I'm looking over at all these craters and going, what can I even build? What can I even do? There's some sort of like forlornness. And I start going down to see the people, and I realize we're actually on top of a very large mountain. And so this very large mountain was holding some sort of power for all of us. And it was like, it was like there's more to come. And I heard and saw people just starting on the horizon to like start approaching. And the next vision I had, that was it for the first vision. I went, okay, don't really know what that's all about. The next vision I came to, I had a conch shell in my hand, and I made the sound, and as the conch shell had resonated out to everyone, more and more people came, and I started seeing, oh my gosh, they also have like horses and oxen and provisions and wagons, and they're all packed, and there's so many of them, and actually they're coming from all sides. And I went, I'm not sure what I need to prepare for, but I guess we got to start preparing. And I looked over to my right, and people had started coming up the mountain to try and shift things around, and they went, oh my gosh, it's so much gold here. And I looked, and as the sunlight started to hit all these craters that I thought were dark and destruction, and there was like a throne that sat next to me that was just destroyed, the rubble of what I believed my career choices of all the endings that I'd experienced were leading up to. I looked at it like it was rubble. And in fact, it was gold. It was leading me all toward this next vision. And over time, I kept going back to this place, this mountain, and I began to understand it was Oracle Mountain. All the people who are coming up are people who have embraced and empowered their own inner oracle. And then we all meet as peers and we talk about what we see on the world below, much like we're doing here. And so I do these Oracle Mountain chats, and I started holding OracleFest because I believe that we need to be experiencing with each other and recognizing all of these different teachers who do know a lot from their life and their stories and a variety of things. So we have like starseed folks, and we've got animal spirit folks. We have DeeAnna was there talking about essential oils as the oracle, which is very near and dear to my heart as an aromatherapist as well. And then we had mediumship, basically anything. So it's like a marketplace or festival for people to dip their toe in. Perhaps their next doorway is one of these many, many things. And so it's like, could I just present a whole bunch of doors to people, and then we all have fun seeing which ones we feel like walking through. And then over time, really, these visions have continued to inform what it is I do within OracleFest. So within 3 months of putting it together, we had 28 speakers, one of whom I'm actually at his house right now, Dr. Stephen Farmer, who meant so much to me because I'd carried his book for years. DeeAnna and all these synchronicities that we experienced upon the creating of this one event so far, this big event, and then the podium series as like an ongoing way of celebrating the inner oracle within people and actually activating from an experience place what it feels like to really trust that intuition and to be surrounded by positive energy. Such a beautiful thing. We have the ability to meet online because there's lots of people in random parts of the world who are just longing to know about, just like the Einstein, it's like all of these people are towards the same kind of towards the same ideas. And one of the things that was very clear was that I was going to need to hold a global healing ceremony. And the global healing ceremony was for all of those of us who were there live to hold in our hearts whatever it is that is affecting us. For me, partly the Madagascar climate and condition. And so I send some positive healing energy supported by everyone there. And I really felt, oh my gosh, we can do so much more because I have all this support. They don't have to send things to Madagascar. I'm charged with that one right now. right? But I'm supported by all of what I felt was everyone working towards a similar goal of improving the world, making the world a better place. I thought and energy and intention just where you are right now. And I want that to expand more and more. So online and also in person events. So that's my dream, is to create more physical and virtual spaces where people can connect to these same ideas of everything we're talking.
What shape the global healing, is that a event? Is that can be like one of those days like that can be truly global?
Yeah, so the global healing ceremony, I always I have Scout here, a big dog lover. So I have the idea that we would do global healing ceremonies both online and also in person, but also other things. Like I have this zany idea that I hope happens one day, which is like a whole bunch of people holding hands, but a surprisingly large number of people holding hands for some purpose and passing an idea through all of us, like physically. I think the world is starting to get ready for more of those in-person things. I also really would love the idea of sharing more cinematically, because I took film. Talk about how your life just points you in the direction you're meant to go. I studied film in post-secondary, and so what I did in that time was think, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna use that again. And now I think, oh my gosh, I can actually use the film skills to help more people see how healing works, get exposed. Because when you see more and more transition, transformation, and changes happen, you do believe in it, because seeing is believing for a lot of us. So trying to bring more healing, the power of how we use our thought and energy together in a cinematic way as well. That's in my mind.
But if you're thinking big, which you are, then what I'm thinking is a global healing, like, like Earth Day, right? Earth Day, it's supposed to be, so global healing day
we'll do
where,
many of those.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea.
One day that catches on to the mainstream.
I want to give
as such, right?
Absolutely.
I want to give anybody here that wants to ask, because we're wrapping up. So anybody that might have a question, this is the time to ask. Not to interrupt the conversation, but just wanted to give the audience the opportunity.
My last question is, you're so multimodal. It's hard to keep up with you because you're so you cover you have a lot of scope. So do you have a credo that encompasses all? Like,
I do struggle with an all-encompassing, because and I change day by day. I think that's like the feminine way. I'm 30 people in one day and then 50 the next. I think something that I really do enjoy is what's done in love is done well. If I can simply bring things back to love and know that I'm acting out of love. If I'm doing something, it's out of love. I love the idea of taking inspired action. That guides me a lot, that I act as inspired and I don't act where, interesting, I was talking about having a larger partnership with one of these bigger companies, and I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if it would ruin things. Would it ruin the creative integrity? I don't know. I was just kind of like debating, waffling, and Doc Steven says, why don't you just try for a second, imagining as if that whole thing came all true. How do you feel? And I was like, oh, that's great. Oh, great, good stuff. Hey, big partnership. Sounds good. And then it was like, okay, what if you, not play it small, but what if you keep it at that different, level? And then I immediately felt like something had just punched me in the gut, and like it was really tight, and I was keeping myself small. I was maybe like, sitting like this or something. It was so drastic, the difference. I thought, why am I even debating? My body told me exactly, what it's wanting, what we're wanting to do. So inspired action, because that one made me feel inspired and the other one made me feel tired and conflicted and small, right? So if you feel inspired, and then inspired action, I think we need more art, we need more celebration, we need more joy and more love, and usually that's from some inspired place, right? Poetry, you're inspired, you have this little moment and kind of comes upon you. So yeah, what's done in love is done well. And
that's a good credo. What's done in love is done well.
Yeah,
and you're using your body as the pendulum.
That too. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I also, you know what I say often? I always say, it's only obvious once it is. Because so much of the time we're stressing out trying to figure things out before it's the time. And then as soon as it's time, it's already figured out. You don't really have to think, alignment is obvious. It's obvious when it is.
Yeah. Yeah, my credo comes from a little poem. It's an excerpt. And it goes, you have a blue guitar. You don't play things as they are. And then the answer is things as they are changed on the blue guitar.
I like it. I like it.
That's mine. We like to ask our guests, when you help or guide people, are you a lamp, a lifeboat, or a ladder?
It's so wild. I did a breathwork session yesterday where I was a boat. So I feel like I'm inclined to only answer the lifeboat, only because yesterday I really did feel first I was in the boat and then I jumped out. And then later on in the breathwork session, I became the boat.
Right.
So I'd like to think lifeboat. I'm kind of a journeyer gal. I'm sort of like a voyager. I
Right.
wouldn't just stay plugged in somewhere. I'm not very good as a lamp.
And a ladder, you're not
Probably,
hierarchical, so it's not a
yeah,
ladder.
not so much a let's get up there. I'm more so let's journey together or yeah, and I really do talk about deep waters a lot. So I'm gonna say the boat.
Right.
Good answer.
Good answer, because a lot of people try to say, well, I'm all three, at different times.
No.
But
I'll stay a boat. That's cool.
and the other synchronicity here was that when you were talking about your childhood experience, I didn't say it, but I thought Alice in Wonderland. And then 5 minutes later, you mentioned Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, no surprises here. Yeah,
Well,
almost
I'm
predictable for all the
definitely a lamp because I'm afraid of heights, so I'm not getting on
Yeah.
a ladder.
Oh, then we have all three because
And I'm not so
You're
good
the
in the
perfect
water.
lamp.
So
I
yeah.
actually, when I said, hey, I wouldn't work for it very well as a lamp, I thought, was probably a good lamp.
Yeah. So
What are you, Cedric?
like the ladder, like we have all three here. Like
Yeah, we did.
like going up and down the ladder, like
Yeah. I
up and
wonder
down,
if,
not just up, but up and down the ladder.
yeah, helping people no matter what state, going up and
Like if you
down,
go up the
the
ladder,
process.
then you have something to bring down the ladder also.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like the journeying, kind of like going
Yeah.
up, get something, bring it back
But
down. Yeah,
it's
that
interesting that
makes sense.
we have all three here.
Very
That's
interesting. A trifecta.
yeah.
there's my lamp.
It's your, oh gosh.
So
If I drew one, that's exactly what it would have looked like.
okay, so we're
it
right on
looks like,
schedule.
yep, we're
So
winding down.
the closing blessing is, may we live in openness to what will emerge next in the evolutionary pageant.
Love it.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
being here.